All right, everybody, we have a major breaking story because Tulsi Gabbard is officially resigning from the Trump administration as Director of National Intelligence. And while the official explanation is deeply personal and honestly very sad, but politically speaking, this also looks like another sign that Trump's second administration is increasingly unraveling from the inside as more and more top officials either step down, are forced out, or are just plain fired. Things are unraveling just as fast as Trump's inflation is increasing and his polls are falling. Now, Tulsi says she's stepping down because her husband, Abraham, has been diagnosed with a rare and aggressive form of bone cancer. And regardless of politics, nobody's rooting for a family going through something like that, for anything bad to happen. And I genuinely hope that he recovers, and I wish them the very best. But on the political side, this resignation also comes at an awfully convenient time for the White House that has been trying to push Gabbard out for weeks. Because behind the scenes, the Trump administration is starting to resemble one of Trump's bankrupt Atlantic City casinos. You know, the kind where management keeps yelling, everything's under control, everything's fine, while the employees are actively stealing the copper wiring out of the walls on their way out. And Tulsi Gabbard's resignation is just the latest example. This isn't happening in isolation. Just 2 months ago, Tulsi's own top counterterrorism official, Joe Kent, resigned over Trump's handling of the Iran war. According to reports, Kent warned internally that Trump was being dragged deeper into a conflict with no clear strategy and no realistic exit plan. And now Tulsi herself is gone too. That's a major red flag because Trump specifically staffed this administration with people he believed would be completely loyal to him. And by loyal, he means people who would agree with him 100% of the time, no matter what he said. And that meant agreeing with him 1 minute when he says one thing, and also agreeing 30 minutes later when he says the exact opposite. And even loyal hangers on sometimes find that a little too hard to do. The entire goal, though, was to avoid the chaos and turnover of his first administration. And yet, here we go again, officials resigning, cabinet turmoil, internal power struggles, and reports of Trump privately pressuring senior officials to step down. According to multiple reports, one of the biggest fractures inside the administration involved Iran. Tulsi assessed that Iran was not actively building a nuclear weapon, an assessment that directly undercut the administration's whole reason for the war. So basically, Gabbard undercut the president on probably the biggest mistake of his life, starting a war of choice in one of the most volatile parts of the world. And in Trump world, disagreeing publicly with the narrative is basically a political death sentence because you're dealing with a president obsessed with loyalty above competence and obsessed with loyalty above integrity. And Tulsi was always an awkward fit in Trump's world anyway, because if you remember, she wasn't always a Republican. She was a Democrat congresswoman from Hawaii originally, and she was also the vice chair of the DNC, not the RNC. She endorsed Bernie Sanders in 2016, and she ran for president as a Democrat in 2020. And yet MAGA lapped her up the minute Trump endorsed her. Nope, Democrat, no problem. Trump likes her. She's our girl. That's the MAGA way of saying it. Then, over time, she drifted further and further into anti establishment politics, culture war politics, and eventually MAGA politics. But one thing stayed consistent throughout all of it: her views on foreign policy. She built her political identity around opposing regime change wars and criticizing the American foreign policy establishment. And that made her extremely popular online and anti establishment circles on both the left and the right. But for democracy loving Americans like you and me, Tulsi didn't become just another conservative politician. She became somebody who was helping normalize authoritarian narratives. She faced enormous backlash for meeting personally with Syrian dictator Bashar al Assad. She's repeatedly echoed Kremlin friendly talking points about Ukraine and NATO, and she consistently amplified narratives that benefited Russia and Putin geopolitically. And then things became even more alarming once she stepped into the Trump administration because One thing that she did that set off alarm bells for many of us was her involvement in the politically charged operations tied to the 2020 election. One of the biggest controversies came when she was physically present during an FBI operation in Fulton County, Georgia, involving the seizure of election related materials tied to ongoing investigations surrounding the 2020 election. Now, think about how strange that is for a second. Tulsi Gabbard wasn't the Attorney General. She wasn't running the FBI. She was the Director of National Intelligence. She was the official overseeing America's foreign intelligence apparatus. And yet there she was down in Atlanta, which isn't even in a foreign country, for a politically explosive operation tied directly to Trump's attempt to steal votes and overturn the 2020 election. All of that was domestic politics, and she had no business being there at all. But she was there trying to curry favor with the maniacal man in the White House. And that crossed an incredibly dangerous line, though, because once intelligence officials began appearing in politically charged election operations, you're entering authoritarian territory once again. It's not the first time we've entered it in this last year. And that should make every American uncomfortable, left and right, MAGA, conservative, Republican, Rhino, everybody should be uncomfortable with that. And I think it's fair to say that a lot of us who oppose Trump aren't exactly devastated to see Tulsi leave government because of many of these reasons. And from a personal standpoint, not happy to see her husband sick either. But politically, this resignation appears to give everyone involved a graceful and convenient exit. Trump avoids publicly firing another high level official. Tulsi avoids the humiliation of being fired. And the White House avoids a messy public battle over foreign policy disagreements, intelligence failures, and internal dysfunction during an increasingly unpopular war. But stepping back, the bigger picture here is what this says about Trump's administration overall. Because this was supposed to be the disciplined Trump administration, the one that didn't have any more rhinos in it or anybody who was fighting against Trump. This was supposed to be the administration filled with loyalists and sycophants who would never, ever disagree with the president. The utopian administration where everybody was always on the same page. And instead, what we're watching looks increasingly like the same chaos, paranoia, infighting, and collapse that defined Trump's first term, except now it's happening with a group he handpicked, specifically because he believed these people had just the right lack of integrity needed to be completely loyal to him at all times. Which is why Tulsi Gabbard's resignation won't feel like the loss of a principal public servant. It'll feel like it'll feel more like the exit of someone who lent credibility to the most dangerous anti-democratic president of our times. And that's the kind of exit most people like to celebrate. So with that said, about the nicest thing I can say to you, Tulsi, is good luck and goodbye. All right. Thanks for watching. I'm Jonathan Burton, and I'll see you soon. Take care.